introduce our speaker. And I have this long thing I've written up. But in the consideration of those who feel I'm taking up too much time, we're just going to bring her up. International researcher in near-death consciousness, University of Virginia, all over the place, worldwide, world-known, a leader in the whole field, right?
Yeah. You do it. No, we'll do it together. So I've known PMH for probably, gosh, what's it been now?
Decades.
At least this time around, a couple of decades. So she's also an incredible authoress. Notice how I gave a nod to my feminine side there. And is a very detailed researcher in all her work, as well as from her own personal experience. So she is one of the foremost international authorities on near-death experiences, and has been on the spiritual path for many, many decades. Great heart. Her husband and I, we just discovered this, a little bit anecdote, a few years ago, went to the same broadcasting school in Washington, D.C. that I did when I was 18 years old. And we met again when I was in like late 40s or something like that. We discovered, he had a photograph of the graduating class of this broadcasting school. And so her husband, Terry Atwater, is a great friend. So anyway, aside from all that, would you please welcome PMH Atwater.
Thank you. Okay, good.
Awesome. Thank you.
I first met PMH Atwater at Hearthfire Lodge.
Yeah.
As a guest of Paul.
We're going back to the Shenandoah Valley. We've been, my husband and I have been with Paul Solomon in and out for long time. When the Growing Fields dream collapsed and he was faced with bankruptcy, I brought in Sunbear and Waban. We had a great healing center and circle to help Paul. And that made a big difference. And when Paul was seriously rushed to the hospital, Rockingham Memorial Hospital in Harrisonburg, Virginia, and faced with imminent death. There was not enough blood at the hospital. My husband went and gave his blood. So we would kid Paul after that. You talk about oneness. Terry's blood is running around in your veins. We are truly one. So, yes, it's a privilege to be here. And it's a privilege and honor for me to recognize missions and jobs. We all have that sense of that we have a job to do in life, or we have a mission to do in life, or there's something that calls us that maybe is special to us in some manner. And certainly, being a near-death survivor myself, 3 times in 3 months in 1977, yes, I died 3 times in 3 months in 1977, and each time had a near-death experience. I call it the heavenly sledgehammer effect. You want something to turn you around, boom, boom, boom. I really got turned around. I was on my way to being a bank manager. Wound up being a near-death researcher. No one in their right mind would choose to be a near-death researcher. A pioneer in the field. I mean, it's crazy. But that's where I was led. But what a lot of people don't know is that I was very dedicated to this kind of work, doing very dedicated kinds of things, beginning in the 60s. I was a ghost hunter. I was researching altered states of consciousness. I was having all kinds of experiences myself. I started Idaho's first nonprofit metaphysical corporation. Yes, I'm from Idaho. It was called Inner Form. We were dealing with people by the thousands. And of course, I was the one always saying, why, what causes this? Where does this come from? Can we play with this? Can we do this? Always questioning, always wondering, always testing, and teaching and experiencing with people by the hundreds and by the thousands. So I was doing kind of the work I did later, but I was doing it then in the spiritual field. Tearing it apart and finding out what worked and what didn't. And did it make any difference to the person and your, time of day? And, I was in it for the details. And I reached a point where I felt like all of us do when we're on the spiritual path and we've been on it for a while, and we have this feeling, this sense of, well, it's time for a new teacher. You have this sense that you've gone as far as you can where you are, and it's time for a new teacher, and I'm looking for the new teacher to come into my life. I got death. I died. That was my new teacher. Death. I wiped everything away. I started all over again. And when I say I started all over again, I mean, most of us forget that near-death experiences, most of them come from violence and trauma. You've got a body to rebuild afterward. So I had to relearn how to crawl, how to stand, how to walk, how to climb stairs, how to run, how to tell the difference between left and right, how to see properly, how to hear properly, and how to rebuild all of my belief systems from scratch. I had been a teacher of astrology, began all over again from scratch. Teaching people meditation for a long time, began all over from scratch. I've been a prize-winning cook, had to begin all over again. Identifying food, a can opener. Oh, that's a saucepan. And maybe if I take the can opener and I go around the can opener, it'll open the can. Oh, then I can take that can of food and I can take a saucepan and I can dip it like this and the food all goes in the saucepan. Oh, that's magic. And then you put it on the stove and you turn this little dial and it heats up, and then when it gets hot enough, you turn the little dial off and you pick up the pan and you empty it into a plate. And then I would say, okay, what's that? I had the habit, but I had no idea what the habit was for. I had no idea what food was, what eating was. Mother of 3 children, well, what's a child? I had no idea what relationships were. It was all wiped clean. So when I say I began from scratch, I'm not kidding. I had to re-identify everything, including me. Well, it's a human body. What's skin? Now, what is this thing I'm wearing? It was a long trip. It took me a year before I was reasonably human. And then I left Idaho, bag and baggage, because I was directed to immigrate east. I felt like I was leaving the United States after I left Denver. You know, everything else was in Greece. You know, I just didn't understand the central states and the eastern states. They just weren't part of my world. I'm Western. You know, cowboys, real Indians. You know, deserts. The spirit keepers of the deserts and the canyons. What is this thing about Virginia? You gotta be kidding, God. You know, there's too many trees here. I can't see the roads. I can't see the houses. I can't see the cars. These trees have leaves, and they block out everything. I'm used to 360-degree vision. Here, you got little parts of vision. I'm used to wide open people. Here people talk in circles and they go around the mulberry bush. And I would have to ask people, would you please say that again? And just do it briefly so I can tell what you're talking about. Idahoans are directly to the point. Virginians go forever and ever and ever and ever, and finally they get to half a point. So it took a while to figure out how to live here. Whoa, did it ever take a while? But I came to love the East, I came to love Virginia. Took a while, but I did make it. My favorite time of the year is winter, because that's when all the leaves, you know, the trees have leaves, and I can see things. So my favorite time of the year is winter. What a trip. Mission job. In my third near-death experience, I really, truly feel, I know. I was at that point of creation and consciousness. I was there witnessing creation as it physically occurred. And I heard a voice speak. No, it wasn't a guide or a guardian. No, it wasn't an ascended master. No, it wasn't any of that. I called it the voice like none other. The only thing I could think of was that it was of God. But that voice was so big. How do you identify that kind of bigness? We don't have words. It's a voice that filled the entire universe. And that voice said to me, and I quote, "Test revelation. You are to do the research. One book for each death." And then it showed me what was to be in each book. It did not name book one. I really think that was coming back to life, but it did not name that book. It did name books 2 and 3. Book 2, if you haven't read it, you should. It's future memory. Every sentence, every paragraph, every page in that book is part of the math I used to create the labyrinth. The book is not a book, it's a labyrinth. And you read through it as you would walk through a real labyrinth. It will change on you just like a labyrinth does. And I say to everybody, don't skip read, or you'll wonder why I wrote such a crazy book, because it will not hold together. It only holds together if you read it straight through. And it will take you places you've never been before. But it is so written to enable your consciousness, your mind, your consciousness, to move up to the next highest level possible for you, just by reading the book. Because the book is designed in such a way that it is like a psychotronic device. It is not a book, it is a brain changer. The book is alive. It's that voice that showed me how to do it. And it is that voice that showed me how to do the third one, the last one, the third book in the third near-death experience. That comes out in April. You know, circle your calendar for April and get the book, A Manual for Developing Humans. It's the first book I ever wrote. I sent it out to my peer group to review. They all came back with the same answer, the same words. And they said, the world isn't ready yet for this book, put it in a box. I did! A very big box. And it dwelt in that box for almost 40 years. And last year, Robert Van de Castle died. If you know anything about Robert Van de Castle, he's one of the world's, I feel, one of the world's leading authorities on dreams. He wrote the seminal book on dreams, Our Dreaming Mind. He was a good friend, and he knew about the book in the box. So I went to his memorial service, and I was parked outside for a little while in front of the place. And he came and sat with me in the car. And he looked at me and smiled, and he said, I knew you'd come. Then he left. And then I went inside the memorial funeral place, sat down in the third row, interesting threes, at a diagonal from a large picture of him that was on the dais. And during the service, he came out of the photograph, right in front of my face, and smiled and said, it is time. I knew what he meant. When the service was over, I sped home, got the box, and I opened it. I now know what it is like for explorers to open caves that have been sealed for hundreds of years. The air kills you. You know, the air is just, you can't breathe. You have to fumigate the house. It just was overcoming. So when I could finally breathe, I went through the stuff in the box. And I thought, well, you know, this isn't bad. Maybe it's right. It's time. It's time to do the third book, the manual. It's done. It's coming out in April. Let me tell you just a little bit about A Manual for Developing Humans. If you think you're on the spiritual path, I challenge you. I challenge you right now. Don't say that I'm on the spiritual path. Don't. No. I want to be fully human. I want to be fully who I am. I want to be everything. Because if I'm everything, I'm spiritual too. I'm everything. If I'm fully human, I'm everything. Did you know that in ancient times, the word for God, the sound of God was Hu? Human, God-man. When you say human, you are affirming that you're God in the making. You are affirming that you're a God-man or a God-woman. You are affirming that. So why don't you be fully human? Why don't you be who you are? Why are you saying I'm on the spiritual path? Why aren't you on the human path? The God-man. God's in the making. That's what this book is all about. All fifth dimensional stuff. God's in the making. That's what the fifth dimension is. God's in the making. Being the God you are. Being co-creators with the Creator. So a manual for developing humans is just that. It has no chapters. It has 6 parts. And 3 divisions to each part. They're all separated by thought form drawings. Yes, there would be thoughts that would open up in the air. I would see them, and I would simply draw what I saw. Because very often I can see thoughts. So that's the drawings, there are 28 of them, that are in the book. In the manual. The manual covers everything. From thinking, to colors, to breathing, to exercise, to eating, to planting foods, to bending time, out-of-body experiences, controlling your environment or blending with your environment. It includes sex, and babies, and kids, and relationships, and money, and banking, and governments, and the spiritual path, and the universal laws, and the pickle syrup story. I won't tell you the pickle syrup story. You have to read the book.
Is it kosher?
No, it's sweet pickles. Everything that you can think of to be a human being is in the book. It shows you how to do it with exercises, simple, easy ones, or it talks about it and gives you ideas. They're all there. How to be who you are. How to be the full human being. How to be the co-creator with the Creator. Simple language. It's all there. How did I do it? Well, I really kind of didn't. I don't channel. We all channel in the sense that we're all muses, we're all channeling something. But I don't channel in the sense of an entity is coming to me. They don't have to do that. They bounce all over the place anyway, and I see them, so, you know, why do I be a channel? I just be who I am, fully conscious, and there they are. So, I'm one of those. How do I explain the voice like none other? We're in partnership. We work together as partners. It doesn't control me, I don't control it. We're partners. When that voice is here, when it's in my office, when it comes to call. How do I describe this? It's like the air opens up. It's like the sky opens up. It's like everything that I know of opens up. And something else comes in. It's not a being of any kind. It's sort of like something, it's sort of like another sky that sparkles, and it just comes in. And it flows, and it's present. And I would take information, and I would, you know, some of the stuff that's in the box, some of the newer stuff, and I'd go to my computer, and I would try to start a section or whatever, and you know, there's this desperation of, give me a word. Give me a sentence. How do I start this? Just give me something. And maybe I get a couple of sentences and then, okay, what's next? What goes next? And that's how it all came together. Partnership. And the human part of me saying, at the time this was happening, who in their right mind is ever going to read this? It's like, it's not like any manual you've ever heard of. It's not like any book you've ever heard of. And it's like, oh, who's going to ever read this? It's like 350 pages or 325 pages. Who's going to ever read this? And the faith is there, and you move forward, and you accept your mission, and you say, thank you, God. I don't know where this is going, but thank you, God. Thank you, God, for the privilege of getting up in the morning and wondering what comes next. Thank you, God, for the puzzle. And the ability to accept the puzzle and do anything with it. So that panic piece, as far as I'm concerned, panic piece, who's going to read this thing? It comes out in April. A manual for developing humans. If you want to keep up with announcements about it, the contents of the book, my website, www.pmhatwater.com. Certainly, if you subscribe to my free monthly newsletter, you do that on the website. Just get in the newsletter section. There's an archive. And if you're concerned about Hillary and Trump, read the August issue. There'll be a lot in that. After the year turns, I'll be teasing people and maybe giving you an idea of what some of the drawings are like. And I want to end this by saying, that was such an adventure to do the manual. It was such a privilege. And 3 weeks ago, I was in Istanbul, Turkey. There was no beggars on the streets. Usually there are. There were none. A couple of little girls, but that's all. There were Syrian refugees. This is the first time I've ever seen them. You see them on television. but it was the first time I was there with them. The women always in twos, never ones, never 3, 4, 5, 6, a group, always twos. They clean your bathrooms. The men always out in the mornings and evenings with huge sacks. They are pulling huge sacks the size of a small car. They pick up trash, they take it to the receptacle place, and that's where they get their money. They are not begging, they are working for their money. I'm a cop's kid. I was raised in a police station. I've been around a lot of trauma. I've been in trauma. I've been in horrible things in life, as I'm sure many of you have been. I have seen horror. I have never seen anything like these Syrian refugees. Their skin had turned to stone. Stop for a minute. Their skin was stone. They could still move. They could still eat. There was no movement at all in faces or arms, any exposed skin. It had turned to stone. These are people so traumatized, they are beyond trauma. And it was that day in Istanbul where I saw this woman across the way, and she was in pain with her legs, obviously in a lot of pain. And so I smiled at her, and then I did exercises on my legs. I did all kinds of exercises, and then I would put out my hands to her, and she would look at me, and I would smile. And I'd do the exercises again, and then I'd put out my hands to her. And I did this numerous times, and she finally caught on that maybe she could do that. So she started doing exercises and doing them again and again, and pretty soon she was no longer in pain. And she smiled. Folks, that's the greatest gift I have ever received. To turn stone back into human form. She smiled. And with that smile, I say to you, we have all kinds of missions and jobs. Maybe being a near-death researcher is a great mission. But I say to you, helping stone to turn to human with a smile was the greatest reward I have ever been given.